It is quite simply the most breathtaking piece of motorsport real estate anywhere in the world. The rich heritage of Mount Panorama Bathurst dates back to 1938, when Englishman Peter Whitehead won the Australian Grand Prix on the dusty and rutty mountain road known then as Bald Hills. 28 years ago, Bathurst became home to what is now known as Australia's Great Race. Initially a 500-mile endurance contest for showroom production cars, it changed in 1974 to a 1,000k metric marathon. During those early days, few of the Panorama pioneers were distracted by side issues such as circuit safety. However, between these cement corridors, the risks are great, and 4 drivers have paid the ultimate price. Legends live on at this famous address. Men like Bob Jane and Harry Firth, who won the first classic in '63, return each year to soak up the atmosphere and keep a watchful eye on their contemporaries, including Alan Moffat, Peter Brock, Freddie Gibson and Colin Bond. Then there are those who wait to write their own chapters of mountain history, the young guns who cannot believe the vice-like grip members of the old firm have had on this race and this place. For 363 days each year, this 6.2 kilometre scenic public road is open to two-way vehicular traffic. The 60k speed limit is strictly enforced, but with the arrival of the October holiday weekend, the pace picks up appreciably. The 7 network welcomes viewers across the globe to Bathurst, New South Wales, for the 29th edition of Mountain Tradition, that is the Tooheys 1000. The world's greatest touring car race.
Yes, hello everyone and welcome to Mount Panorama and the Great Race. Wherever you may be watching in Australia or overseas, we certainly hope you'll enjoy 7 Sports live and exclusive coverage of the Tooheys 1000. Well, we saw in our opening just some of the history that surrounds this great race. Yesterday, 24-year-old Victorian Mark Skaife stamped his name in the history books with a sizzling lap in the Tooheys Top 10 shootout. Behind the microphone and heading our commentary team for his 21st year of phenomenal effort is Mike Raymond. Mike, welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you, Sandy, and good morning to Richard Hay and Mark Osler. Well, guys, I think we have very, very hot conditions here today for a super race. Everyone believes that the Nissans are odds-on favourite. Do you see it that way?
Well, yes, except that 1988, I think it was, they were odds-on favourites then. They lasted 17 minutes, both cars.
Mark, we've followed them in the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. If you had to place a bet, Nissan 1-2?
They're certainly the runaway favourites, yeah. If it was a horse race, you'd be putting money on it. But the whole key to this race is how hard the Sierras and Commodores can push that car. Yeah.
Well, the action, of course, Sandy, started here just over half an hour ago with the morning warm-up and the traditional Scots School Bathurst band, the pipes and drums, piping the cars into pit lane for the first time. Tremendous atmosphere and a huge crowd here at Mount Panorama early this morning. We saw probably a record turnout yesterday for the Tooheys Top 10, and of course we have them streaming into the circuit at the moment. They certainly broke the morning silence, leading the cars down pit lane, the drivers getting ready for the morning warm-up that lasts just on 20 minutes. Drivers take the opportunity to go out, probably do 2 or 3 laps, come in, make sure the car is balanced, it's set, and they are ready to race. The real action, though, here at Mount Panorama began on Wednesday. The Tooheys Top 10 yesterday, of course, produced no surprises in Mark Skaife getting pole position. But really, it has been a week of drama. Wednesday's track time was a handy guide to what Team Nissan had in mind for the rest of the week. The 2 Gibson Motorsport GTRs came out firing with low 14-second laps, closely followed by Glenn Seaton's Peter Jackson Sierra and the GIO GTR of Sydney speedster Mark Gibbs. By Thursday, Mark Skaife and Jim Richards were into the 13s, and on Friday, the 12s. Picking up the pace caused problems for some like Kiwi Kane Scott, who had a lose at Repco but recovered. Not so on the exit to the cutting, where he got out of shape and clouted the concrete, giving the tape crew work they didn't really need. Despite a couple of mild spins and a little body contact, the qualifying sessions were remarkably free of the usual crash and carnage. Yesterday's top 10 shootout brought together 4 Sierras, 3 Nissans and the Commodore trio of Percy Perkins and Perfect Peter. First out was Tasmanian David Parsons in the Peter Jackson Sierra. Smooth run for 2:17.581. Then it was time for Win Percy to launch the V8 attack. He gave it his best shot, but the time of 2:17.7 was slower than his Friday best. Dick Johnson went quicker in the 17 Shell Sierra, shaving almost half a second off his best for the week. But then it was time for Brock to deliver some mountain magic, and he didn't disappoint a soul. Really gassing it up now as he comes out of the turn and heads up to BP. There's Brock at work.
A picture of total concentration. Brock at 10/10 around Mount Panorama, a circuit he dearly loves, and a circuit he does particularly well at.
Boy, he's putting the boot in. Yeah, he's chasing the thing all the way up to the rev limiter in each gear, and he braked very, very late at the end of Mountain Straight. Look at the car leap over there. It's set up reasonably soft. The front left wheel was about 18 inches off the deck, I think, through Reed Park.
And listen to that crowd.
Look at the rear wheel. It was off the deck over the top of McPhillamy. Oh!
Oh, listen to the crowd. They're loving this. The Mountain Master, Brock, 9 times winner, back in a Holden, and gee, he's really on the limit.
And he's not running the race engine, running a practice engine, so he can afford to give it everything. The crowd might be loving it. He wouldn't have liked that moment. That cost him time getting sideways there. He had to lift off and get the thing recovered.
16.07, 2:16.07 for Peter Brock. Certainly a big improvement, but he won't be happy.
You made a couple of little mistakes, mate.
Yeah.
What about McPhillamy Park?
Yeah, what happened is I had the brakes adjusted for a full tank of petrol, and foolishly as I touched the brake, I went in and oversteered. And the same thing over here. I thought, oh, Brock, what are you doing?
Brock, I can tell you the mob on the hill loved it.
I loved it, mate, because I kept the pedal to the metal, as you know, Slug.
Teammate Larry Perkins followed in the number 11 Mobile machine and cut a solid lap of 2:17.01. Slower than his previous best, but reasonably happy just the same.
On paper, the Nissans are quicker. They're a racing car, not a touring car.
Tasmanian John Bow was the first and only driver to get into the 15s. His lap was a beauty, and not even Drew Price and the number 2 Nissan GTR could better the mark. Then it was time for Glenn Seaton to deliver his best in the number 30 Peter Jackson Sierra. His lap was super smooth, and the young Victorian stopped the clocks at 2:14.90, and he was stoked.
I really wanted to get on the front rail of the grid this weekend and sort of top the weekend off so far, and hopefully come tomorrow we can sort of beat them Nissans. But I'm really wrapped with the car. It's been working fantastic all week.
Then it came down to the final 2. Mark Gibson, the GIO GTR, and Mark Skaife aboard the number 1 machine. Gibbs' effort was most impressive at 2:13.88, considerably faster than his Friday best, and a guaranteed berth in the front row. Skaife responded as only he can, charging around the course in 2 minutes 12.63 seconds, his personal best for the week, and pole position for today's Tooheys 1000.
Pretty good lap. I got a little bit untidy in a couple of spots, but that's about as good as we can do.
Well, if that was untied and you've got pole position, you've got a little bit up your sleeve, you're saying that?
No, not really. I think that's about as quick as we can go.
So here's how the top 10 will line up today. Skaife and Jim Richards in the number 1 Nissan from pole. 2, the GIO GTR of Gibbs and Rowan Onslow. 3, the Peter Jackson Sierra with Seaton and Greg Hansford. 4, the number 18 Shell Sierra of John Bow and Terry Shield. 5, the pride of Queensland, Dickie Johnson and Kiwi Paul Radisich in the number 17 Shell Sierra. 6, the Mobile 05 Commodore of Peter Brock and Andrew Madecki. 7, the number 2 Nissan of Drew Price and Gary Walden. 8 is Larry Perkins and Thomas Maziran, the number 11 Mobile Commodore. From 9, David Parsons and Wayne Park in the Peter Jackson Sierra. And 10, the defending champions Win Percy and Alan Grice in the Holden Racing Team Commodore.
Yes, there is the top 10, and tremendous interest this year as to just who will be King of the Mountain. Peter Brock is having his 23rd start in the race. And now back with the General, Peter Perfect is chasing his 10th win here at Mount Panorama.
Football, meat pies, Peter Brock and Holden cars have been part of our sporting heritage for over 2 decades. Peter's winning ways at Mount Panorama commenced in 1972. Since then, he's called at Victory Lane on 9 occasions, all for Holden. '75 was the era of the SLR 5000. 78 and 79 he teamed with Jim Richards in the A9X, before giving Commodore its first victory in 1980. A hat-trick with Larry Perkins in 82, 83 and 84 saw the lad from Eltham finally dubbed Peter Perfect. His 9th win was a rebound ace from FISA when the sport's governing body TKO'd the Eggenberger Sierras from the 87 results. Brocky has since tried unsuccessfully to win Bathurst for both BMW and Ford. But this year he's back with the great Aussie V8 engineered by Larry Perkins. And somehow, podium visit number 10 does seem a reality.
Well, in the words of 9 times champion Peter Brock, the key to Bathurst is teamwork between the drivers, the cars and the pit crews. One mistake from any area and months of preparation can literally count for nothing. Neil Crompton, a starter in today's race, knows only too well the importance of pit crews.
It may be a well-worn motor racing cliche, but races like the Tooheys 1000 are very often won or lost in the pits. Pit stops and vehicle servicing efficiency are critical. Up to 11 people must work together with military precision under the pressure of a stopwatch in difficult and dangerous conditions. It's a task that's often bungled, and when things do go wrong, it usually spells the end of that team's chance of success. So in that flurry of noise and activity, what exactly is going on? Let's look at the Glenn Seaton Greg Hansford Ford Sierra as an example. When the Sierra rockets into the pit lane, the drill begins, and in this case, 11 specialists leap to work. The cast includes a car manager up front, 2 drivers, 4 wheelmen, 2 refuelers, 1 vent bottle operator and a fireman. The rules dictate that no more than 7 people, excluding the drivers, are allowed to touch the car at any given moment. Today we can expect cars like the Sierra to make up to 4 stops. The first is for fuel, tyres and a driver change. The second for fuel, tyres, a driver change and front brake pads. The third for fuel, tyres, a driver change and possibly rear pads. And the fourth, and hopefully final, for fuel, tyres, maybe a driver change and front brake pads. When the car comes to a halt, an air coupling is attached at the nose and 4 internal air jacks lift the Sierra off the ground. The wheelmen remove the lock nut with air-operated rattle guns. This car has centre lock single nut wheels. Other teams may run 5 studded wheel fixings and nuts. Up above you can see the gantry holds the air lines clear of the car. Now, a fuel, tyre and driver change stop generally takes around about 30 seconds. This stop, where the team performs those functions, plus a brake pad change, about 60, 75 seconds. At the front of the car, once the wheel is removed, the tricky process of changing brake pads commences, usually a very tough task if the pads have buckled or jammed. But we'll come back to this process. Behind me, the drivers are already into their gymnastics. Now, hang on a minute, guys. Let's slip into rewind and have a closer look at this. Greg's opened the door and unclipped Glenn's radio cord. The driver normally undoes his belt as he's about to stop, and the current rules permit the engine to be running. Once they've swapped, the departing driver then hooks up the radio as the driver does battle with the 6-point harness. And while all this action is unfolding, the car manager's busy cleaning the normally filthy windscreen and checking all the fluid levels under the bonnet. This is what it all looks like from back here. The refuelers are dumping 120 litres of fuel into the dry brake tank system. The Seaton team uses individual fuel churns. Other teams may use an overhead tank and hose. The churns hold 40 litres each. Over here, the vent bottle holder is standing by ready to catch the overflow when the tank's full. Let's explain the dry brake fueling system a bit better. The spring-loaded nozzle on the churn is pushed into the spring-loaded receiver. When they're coupled, there's no spillage of fuel. To enable the fuel to dump freely, the system is vented. The churns are vented here, and the tank breathes via a vent bottle. This clear bottle is pushed into an identical coupling system and the cap on the bottle's open. It takes about 10 seconds to empty each churn, and they're heavy. The fuel rushes in unimpeded, and once the tank is full, the vent bottle begins to fill. Rod will then rip the bottle back, and the spring-loaded valve seals the tank and there's no spill. Now back to the brake pad change up front. Once Paul's wrestled the old mangled pads out of the caliper, he uses the pliers again to squeeze the pistons back and fits the new pads. Let's look at that again. With the pads removed, he then squeezes back the hydraulic pistons. When they're right back into the caliper, there's sufficient clearance to fit the new full-width meaty brake pads. Glenn's car doesn't have retaining bridges at the front of the calipers, so all Paul has to do is fit the pads and snap in the retaining clip. Then the wheel goes back on. This whole process is hot and dangerous work. The old pads are smouldering away at about 800 degrees C, and nothing in the wheel well would be cooler than about 200 degrees C. Now, there's a couple of extra considerations. Remember that once you've pulled off the circuit and you're not at racing speed, you're losing a heap of time to the opposition. So the time it takes to get in and out of the pits is critical. You'd be staggered by the number of disasters that can and do occur in these stops, but when you get them constantly right and your on-track performance is upwards, you can smoke the opposition.
Affable Queenslander Dick Johnson is one of the most popular drivers in the country. Over the years, the fans have warmed to the man who's continually defied the odds.
Finishing between a rock and a hard place at Bathurst in 1980 inadvertently launched Dick Johnson into the touring car big time, and he hasn't looked back since. A year later, he was crowned King of the Mountain after the race was declared 43 laps short due to the monumental stack at Skyline. On that occasion, though, Johnson was in the right place at the right time. His Australian Touring Car Championship record is impressive, with 5 wins since 1981. Johnson and Bathurst meant drama for many years, but in '89, at the height of the Shell Sierra reign, Dick nailed his second victory, thanks to faithful sidekick John Bowe. This year has not been kind to the Queenslander, but during the August media day, the Shell Sierra was certainly on the pace, and the demon from Daisy Hill gives himself every chance of picking up win number 3 here today.
They're coming from everywhere for the great race today, and that gentleman making a successful landing and no doubt taking his spot. Let's now take a look at the entire field. Here's Mike.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Jim Richards and Mark Skaife hold pole position for the great race. Mark Gibbs and Rowan Onslow sharing the GIO Nissan. From 3, it's car number 30, Seaton and Hansford. From position number 4, 18, John Bowe and Terry Shield. And from 5, Dick Johnson and Kiwi Paul Radisich.
From 6, Peter Perfect, Peter Brock and Andy Miedeke. From 7, Price and Walden with the second of the Works Nissans. 8, Perkins Mazzara with the second of the Mobile Cars. 9, Parsons and Park. And 10, last year's winners, Percy and Grice.
From position 11, Longhurst and Jones in the little BMW. From position 12, car 10, Brancatelli and O'Brien in the first of the Moffat Sierras. From 13, car 7, the Brad Jones and Neil Crompton in the Holden Commodore. From 14, car 8, Bond and Crosby. And from position 15, Millen and Brabham in the second Moffat Sierra.
From position number 16, it's Ashby and Reed in the Lansvale Smash Repairs Commodore. 17, 15, John Smith and Morgan in the Mercantile Mutual Supra. From 18, 28, Kevin Waldock and Peters in the Playscape Sierra. From 19, 20, Peter Fitzgerald and Denny Holm in the BMW. And 20, number 12, English and Scott in the Valvoline Sierra.
From position 21, Moore and Michel Delcourt from Belgium with their Commodore. Bolwell and Abrahams in the Sierra for position 22. 23rd, car 33, Pearson and Stewart. 24th, Finnegan and Leeds with their Commodore. And 25th, Scott and Taylor with the third of the Shell Sierras.
From position 26, car 39, O'Brien and Callaghan in the Everlast Commodore. From 27, car 6, the 2 Grants in the sizzling Nissan. From 28, car 13, Jansen and Gazzard in the Commodore. From position 29, car 14, Johnson and Johnson, Queensland. Position 30, car 41, Wilmington and Awadullah in the Supra.
Position 31, 44, Barrow and McIntyre in the Sierra. 32 is 52, Cotter and Dulman in the BMW. 33, car number 21, Jones and Emery in the Commodore. From 34, car 34, the father and son combo, Golson and Golson. And from 35, 50, Sala and Lusty in the Tyre Town Sierra.
From position 36, car 26, Hendrick and Lambden with their Commodore. 37th, Tyndall and Stewart with another Commodore. And 38th, yet another Commodore, Donaher and Donaher. Jeff Full's remarkable little Corolla heads the bottom class, the small engine class with car 78 in 39th. And 40th, Sharp and Salvegta with the BMW M3.
From 41, Bates and Bates in the Mercantile Mutual Corolla. From 42, Searle and Griffiths in another Corolla. 43 is Sala and Stratton in the Corolla. 44 is Verheyen and Vernon in the Corolla. 45 is 76 Conway and Gardner.
From position 46, car 75, Wright and Dunford in Bob Holden's Corolla. From 47, car 73, Holden and Altonen in another Corolla. 48, car 77, the Foreshore Vorst Corolla.
And so there we have it, the entire field for this year's great race. And although Nissans will start a warm favourite for this year's race, Alan Grice is confident they can be beaten, and beaten by his HRT Commodore. His solution is simple. Like last year, the Holdens will just wear them down.
For sheer versatility and achievement, Alan Grice has few peers in Australian motorsport. The man they call the meanest amigo tried unsuccessfully for many years to tame Mount Panorama. Then, in 1986, it all came together. Grice spent most of the season giving the Europeans what for in their own championship, before teaming with Graham Bailey to win Bathurst in the Chickadee Commodore. Europe again beckoned, this time with a Nissan contract. But NASCAR and Oscar Racing were on the launching pad at home, and he was sold on the formula. He campaigned successfully in both classes, became the first non-American to qualify for the World 600 at Charlotte, and was toasted by the US media. Last year, he accepted Wyn Percy's invitation to join him at Holden for the Tooheys 1000. It's history now, they cracked the jackpot. And just to prove he does possess that mountain magic, Grice also won the inaugural James Hardy 12-hour classic here in April. Grice, Percy and Holden are back together for the 91 edition Tooheys 1000, and given the general success rate at this place and this race, you'd be foolish to wager against them.
The countdown continues to the Tooheys 1000, the great race for 1991. In fact, it'll be underway in just a little over 15 minutes from now. But right now, a very important duty. I have with me the Chief Executive Officer of the Channel 7 television network, Mr. Bob Campbell. He's got a very big cheque for Mark Skaife, the pole sitter.
Thank you, Gary. On behalf of the 7 Network and the sponsor Tooheys, Mark, congratulations on pole in a record time of 2:12.26. Good luck for today. Well done.
Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you.
15,000. What are you going to do with that?
Give it straight to Freddie. I think we probably need every one of them. But no, thank you very much. Thank you very much to Tooheys and the Channel 7 Network for the support of the race. And hopefully by 4 o'clock this afternoon we can take some more money off them.
OK, good luck today. Mark Skaife, pole winner, the man that's going to be in the hot seat when the flag drops on the Tooheys 1000 in a very few minutes from now. Right now, here's Mike Raymond.
Thank you very much, Gary Wilkinson. Well, just look at the colour along Pitt Straight. We have the field lined up. I notice Alan Moffat's number 9 car sitting over there, the Synovus Vitamin Sierra. The number 4 GIO Nissan GTR to be driven today by Mark Gibbs. We have some indication of the drivers who will actually start the race. Jim Richards will start in the pole-winning Nissan. Mark Gibbs, Glenn Seaton, John Bowe, Dick Johnson, and of course 05 is Peter Brock. Jimmy looking happy. He'll be carrying one of our race cams today. So too Dick Johnson, Peter Brock, Colin Bond will have 2 specialist cameras, and we'll be able to talk to Niels on Wheels, Crompton, and of course young Bradley Jones.
This is the first time in Bathurst history we've had an all Nissan front row. Quite an historic moment, this. And Nissan have worked very hard to get here. It's been 10 years since they started their campaign for outright honours on Mount Panorama. It hasn't gone well for them over the years.
So that's the scene at the moment as we go trackside now to Gary Wilkinson.
Ladies and gentlemen, with the combined services of the Golden Kangaroos and the band of the 2nd Military District, it's now my pleasure to introduce to perform the national anthem, Advance Australia Fair, the king of country music in Australia, James Blundell.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is good by sea. Our land abounds with of beauties rich and rare. On history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Now, the Minister for Sport in New South Wales, Mr. George Souris.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Australian Racing Drivers Club, Tooheys 1000 and Channel 7, it's my very great pleasure to get the 1991 Tooheys 1000 underway for today, and I'll do it in the traditional way, calling for, gentlemen, start your engines. That is the best start your engines I've ever heard. Yes, yes.
Jimmy Richards in the number 1 car sits there. Pictures from our pole cam that we'll be able to bring you beneath the cars during the pit stops.
Well, the big advantage, of course, that the Nissan people and the Brocks and the Moffats and the Seatons enjoy is the fact that when the flag drops, their script doesn't go out the window like it does with a lot less experienced and less well financially supported teams, I guess. They've got a plan and they'll stick to it right through the day, and they'll cope with whatever might go wrong.
Not too far off the start, about 10 seconds away from the 1991 great race. The 7 Network welcomes you to Bathurst. The 29th edition of the great race. They're racing off the starting line. We take chopper cam, and you can see that Mark Gibbs has absolutely stonewalled them off the start, and in fact I wouldn't be surprising to see whether Dick Johnson has been able to get up on the outside. Jim Richards missed the kick initially, but they're all through the first turn and heading up Mountain Straight now for the first time. No incidents through past the sand trap, and Mark Gibbs, the young Sydney driver driving for Bob Forbes Racing in the GIO Nissan, there he is out in front. Jimmy Richards back in third, and it looks like a great start from Dickie Johnson or John Bower.
Nissan Ford as they head up the mountain for the first time. A poor start from Richards, but he did get it going. Look at this, the GIO car of Gibbs Onslow. These young guys have got a lot to prove, and they will be rapt to be leading the first lap of this race.
And Glenn Seaton coming back after a tardy start, slipped from 3rd position on the grid back to about 9th, but has recovered a few places already.
You can't win this one in 1 lap, but Mark Gibbs is sprinting. The 2 Johnson Sierras, 2nd and 4th, split by Jimmy Richards, and wait for the crowd to acknowledge Peter Brock and the Holden set at the top of the mountain. Here's Richards sitting in behind Johnson.
There's the second of the Nissan GTRs, the Price Walden car. Peter Brock just ahead of him, holding up the Holden flag on the first lap around.
Coming down towards the dipper. The exit from there. Win Percy up with them. Beautiful shot from our chopper at the top of Mount Panorama as they run down towards Mazda Forest Elbow. And an incident-free start to the event as they work their way now to Conrod Straight for the first time. One of the early ones, our car number 32, with a head gasket problem in the pits already.
Bobby Tyndall. Big disappointment for him.
Yes, they would be. That's the GIO car that's cross-entered for Gibbs and Onslow, so they haven't got another car to fall back on. But boy, if they got the pedal down on this opening lap, they've opened about 100 metres on the field as they come through Caltech's chase the first time around.
Notice one of the Moffat cars already up alongside Win Percy, and down under brakes comes Jim Richards, takes the number 18 car. Dick Johnson sits in behind as they strike off the first lap here at Mount Panorama. Mark Gibbs driving for Bob Forbes Racing, and the Nissan, sponsored by GIO, will lead them up Mountain Straight for the 2nd time.
Nissan 1st and 2nd, then the 2 Shell Team Sierras, followed by the 2nd of the Nissan team cars.
They go beneath the Nissan bridge. What a beautiful start. Let's have a look at the Prima Holiday replay as we take our race cam with Dick Johnson. He got away very smartly behind them, and it was John Bow up on the outside who was able to slot into second place behind Gibbs, then Richards, then Johnson. That was the order off the start in the opening lap.
Head up the mountain for the second time. The two Sierras holding station. Bow ahead of Johnson. And then we've got the first of the Commodores, Peter Brock and Win Percy. It's going to be a hot pace in these opening laps. The Nissans I predicted to be around the high 16s, low 17s, certainly this early in the race. And it will be up to the top Sierras and the Commodores to push these cars. As we get into the first hour or two of the race, we'll see some sort of form emerging. But certainly by their qualifying times, the Nissans are on top at the mountain in 1991.
Drew Price looks anxious to go faster in behind the Shell team cars too, as the others at the front are getting away. Gibbs pursued hotly now by Jim Richards. Once he got past Dick Johnson's opened up quite a space.
Once again they exit Forest Elbow. Bow, Johnson, and the other Nissan, of course, trying to pass the pair of them down Conrod Straight. Absolutely flat strap there.
There we are, as we expected, the two Nissans making a break on the field. Richards has certainly closed the gap on the Gibbs Onslow car. Two Shell Sierras locked in there, the third of the works cars, as they filed into Caltech's chase.
And you can see the gap there too. About 150, 200 metres back now to the third, fourth and fifth cars. Gibbs being hauled in rapidly by Jim Richards. Richards, I think, anxious to get to the lead. Nose to tail, the next half dozen. Glenn Seaton going through. Neil Crompton, or Brad Jones rather, in the number 7 Holden dealer team car.
Well, the beauty for Jimmy Richards here is that he's got a second car to fall back on if something goes wrong with this car, so they can really use the lead car as the hare and make all the tortoises follow.
Dice for the lead now as Mark Gibbs in the GIO Nissan is passed by Jimmy Richards on the outside. Richards sneaks up, takes the lead away. Gibson will now fall in behind. They have already established quite a break over the rest of the field. The exit from Repco Corner, and they work their way now towards BP Cutting. And I would think, and probably Mark Gibbs is not too disappointed about that. He can sit in behind Richards, watch what he does, and he's clear of the traffic.
Drew Price has taken the 17 Shell car, moved up one slot.
Out of Tui's turn now to work the top part of the mountain and lurch here to the right.
Second of the works cars running conservatively all week, and I guess that's the race plan. Keep that car on the island without a scratch on it. And if something goes wrong with number 1, they've got it there to fall back on. So we take race cam inside Peter Brock's mobile Commodore. Brocky hard at work, trying to nail one of the Shell Sierras as they head down the mountain. Brock did a spectacular qualifying lap in the top 10 runoff yesterday. He's really on fire at the mountain this year.
Johnson just ahead. Peter Brock, a master at this. And as they exit Mazda Corner, it doesn't require too much in the way of commentary. Just listen to that awesome V8. Thought you were travelling quickly with Brock, and then all of a sudden Glenn Seaton just blew by him. We'll stay with Brock because he has Win Percy and he is just a pass master on Mount Panorama.
Glenn Seaton, the man on the move, has cleaned up Brock at the end of the straight, now looking after one of the Shell cars. Very impressive first few laps from Glenn Seaton in the Peter Jackson Sierra, the man who's been on form all year, finished 4th in this year's Australian Touring Car Championship. The car has seemed virtually bulletproof all year.
Last lap for Jim Richards, 2:18.
Look at this as Glenn Seaton on the inside. Here he comes, car number 30, through on the inside of Dick Johnson. He may have missed the start, as Gary pointed out. Wow, straight over the top of their track cam is Jim Richards, the exit from Mazda Corner, and he now works Conrod Straight. That's the gap back to second. Mark Gibbs, a little taily coming out of there. then followed by John Bauer. Next one is Drew Price. Then Glenn Seaton and those bunch of Holdens right behind him. One of the Corollas just down a lap already as Richard sprints down Conrod Straight. Here comes Seaton down the outside of the Sierra.
We've got car 7, the second HRT car in the pits. Looks like a regulation.